Hi, good afternoon to all of you. So, welcome back after the break. So, in the first session, we began to discuss about world history, and in that topic, we started to discuss about the factors that led to industrial revolution in England. We had discussed all the major factors, along with the end of medieval age in Europe and the beginning of modernization that started with industrial revolution in England during 18th century. So we had discussed all the major factors that led to industrialization Britain having long-term consequences. When we use the term revolution for any historical event, it means that event had long-term consequences which could not be reversed till contemporary times. Clear? So with this, we'll understand what were the major consequences of industrial revolution in Britain. Clear? And in this context, we'll understand about consequences of industrial revolution in England. Clear? And in this context, first of all, we'll understand about consequences within England, then consequences even outside England as well. Clear? So first of all, let us start with consequences of industrial revolution. Clear? So consequences of industrial revolution. Consequences of industrial revolution. Now just understand first of all, clear? Industrial revolution was due to rapid growth and development of large and heavy industries in Britain or England, and therefore at the same time most of it was confined to the textile sector, and therefore England emerged to be big producer of goods and services related to textile sector. Clear? Apart from this, when the industrial revolution took place, the merchant and the capitalist class of Britain brought large number of workers from Asia and Africa. They even organized a trade known as slave trade, whereby large number of human beings were brought from Asia and Africa, and they were made to work for unregulated number of hours in the industrial setups of Britain. Clear? So at the same time, when industrialization began to take place, large and number of workers began to work under strict condition, and that too for unregulated number of hours. Clear? In this context, two major classes emerged in England. One was the capitalist class having huge amount of surplus wealth. Another was large number of impoverished sections of workers, and most of them, these workers were forced to stay in urban areas and in slums. Clear? And several urban centers got established during this time in Britain, like Manchester, Liverpool, Birmingham, Bristol. Clear? All these cities came into being, and all these cities were marked by two extreme classes. Clear? One was the extreme class of capitalist class, affluent capitalist class. Another was extreme condition of workers under unhygienic conditions in slums. Clear? Since condition of workers became very pathetic due to industrial revolution, some capitalist class only began to realize that if the interest of workers are not protected, industrial growth cannot be sustained. So some capitalist class began to talk about proper resource distribution in favor of the capitalist class. In fact, they began to convince the capitalist class that some part of the profit must be shared with the working class so that their condition can also be improved and industrial growth can be sustained. Clear? Such kind of point whereby resources were to be distributed even in favor of working class marked the rudimentary beginning of a new ideology known as the ideology of socialism. Clear? So it is very important to understand that capitalism led to industrial revolution, and industrial revolution in turn promoted socialist ideology. Now what do we mean by this ideology? We'll understand. Clear? Under the ideology of socialism, it is believed that resources of a nation must be owned and controlled by a central agency like government or state, and the state will organize the economic economic system in such a manner that resources get distributed equitably among all sections and equality gets established in society. Clear? So this is the phenomena known as phenomena of socialism. Clear? It began to be advocated by some capitalist class only to convince the capitalist members to redistribute the resources in favor of working class. However, such convince or such argument could not be highly impactful and therefore resources could not be distributed. That is why these socialist leaders who began to emerge in Britain, they are known as utopian socialists or they are known as ideal socialists because they could not have much impact on society. And these terms like utopian socialists or ideal socialists are used largely by a German thinker and philosopher, Karl Marx, who advocated the concept of scientific socialism, also known as Marxism, in the middle of the 19th century. And from there, socialism began to acquire huge acceptance and popularity because of the scientific argument given by Karl Marx. Clear? But socialism found its rudimentary beginning as a consequence of industrial revolution, and this ideology still remains to be popular in many parts of the world, which could not be reversed. So this is one major consequence of industrial revolution, that is growth and development of socialist ideology. Clear? Coming to the second consequence, and that second consequence related to intensification for the race of imperialism and colonialism. Clear? First of all, we'll write about the concept of socialism. Clear? Write heading as consequences of industrial revolution. Write introduction first. Clear? Right. The term revolution is applied. The term revolution is applied. Revolution is applied. Is applied to those historical events. To those historical events that has. To those historical events that has long-term consequences, that has long-term consequences which could not be reversed, which could not be reversed till contemporary times, which could not be reversed till contemporary times. Reversed till contemporary times. Contemporary times. Clear? Times. Right. The rapid growth of industries in England. The rapid growth of industries in England. Growth of industries in England led to radical changes. Led to radical changes in England. Radical changes in England as well as in different parts of the world, as well as in different parts of the world, which could not be reversed, which could not be reversed, which could not be reversed, could not be reversed. Clear? Could not be reversed. Reversed. Clear? Right. First of all, industrial revolution in England. Industrial revolution in England led to rapid growth of population, led to rapid growth of population as well as rapid growth of population as well as multiplication of urban cities, multiplication of urban cities. Clear? Urban cities. Right. Several urban centers like Liverpool, Manchester, Birmingham, Bristol, several urban centers like Liverpool, Manchester, Birmingham, Bristol, and Leeds, came into existence. And Leeds came into existence as a consequence of industrialization. Clear? Right. All these urban centers were marked by rich and aristocratic capitalist class, on the one hand, rich and aristocratic class on the one hand, and the poor and the working class on the other hand, Clear? Right. The workers were forced to live in slums. The workers were forced to live in slums under unhygienic conditions. Hygienic conditions mentioned by English writer, novelist, Charles Dickens. English writer Charles Dickens. Clear? Right. Consequently, some capitalists realized that the interest of workers needs to be protected and promoted. Interest of workers needs to be protected and promoted to sustain industrialization. Industrialization. Clear? Right. This marked the rudimentary beginning. Of the ideology of socialism Ideology of socialism. Ideology of socialism. Now write the definitions, very important, clear? Right, according to the philosophy of socialism, according to the philosophy of socialism, the resources of a nation, the resources of a nation must be owned and controlled. The resources of a nation must be owned or controlled by the state or government, by the state or government, state or government, in order to ensure proper distribution, in order to ensure proper distribution, to establish equality in society, to establish equality in society, equality in society. Clear concept? We'll come to variants of socialism later on. Clear? Socialism. Right, next paragraph. Right. However, this ideology could not develop effectively, in England, could not develop effectively in England, and therefore it was termed as, utopian socialism, termed as utopian socialism, or bookish socialism, or bookish socialism, ideal socialism, bookish socialism. Clear? Right here only. It must be noted. It must be noted. It must be noted that socialism in its proper sense, socialism in its proper sense, was advocated by Karl Marx in the 19th century. Karl Marx in the 19th century. In the 19th century, known as scientific socialism, or Marxism. Scientific socialism or Marxism. We'll come to this ideology. Scientific socialism or Marxism. So, socialism rudimentally started as a consequence of Industrial Revolution in England. Clear? Change paragraph. Clear? Right. The second major consequence of Industrial Revolution. The second major consequence of Industrial Revolution was the beginning of beginning of imperialism and colonialism. Imperialism and colonialism. Colonialism. Clear? Right. The British traders and merchants. The British traders and merchants began to establish imperial control. Began to establish imperial control over continents of Asia and Africa, over continents of Asia and Africa, and even colonial control over North America. North America was colonized by Britain, and colonial control over North America. So, imperial control means proxy control, colonial control means direct control, and colonial control over North America. North America. This was imperialism and colonialism. Now, just understand from here. Don't write. Clear? Later on, we'll see other countries jumped into the race for imperialism and colonialism like France and Germany, which intensified and led to colonial rivalry, and that became a major factor for two world wars. Even world wars are traced back to industrialization in England. Clear? So, two major consequences. One was growth and development of socialist ideology, and second was beginning of imperialism and colonialism, Asia, Africa and American continent. We'll come to that about British imperialism and colonialism. Meanwhile, clear? Another consequence that was felt beyond Britain, beyond England in other parts of the world was that in course of time, other countries also began to catch up with industrialization process, and industrial revolution was witnessed in other countries of the world as well, and therefore it became a global phenomenon in course of time. So we'll discuss about major countries where industrialization took place along with emphasis on distinctive features, because in mains examination get questions on distinctive features of industrialization in different countries. First of all, clear? After England, the next country to challenge the medieval system and to start industrialization was none other than the mainland country of Europe, that is France. England is not a mainland country of Europe because England or Britain is separated from European mainland by a large water body known as English Channel. Clear? So Britain is not a mainland country of Europe, rather a country away from mainland Europe. In mainland Europe, the first country to start industrialization was France. Clear? France challenged all the medieval system like autocratic monarchy, feudal system, domination of clergy and noble clergy and church by the end of 18th century during French Revolution. We'll come to this history. French Revolution started in 1789, continued for 10 years till 1799, which was ended by great warrior Napoleon Bonaparte. And under the leadership of Napoleon Bonaparte, France also started to go for rapid industrialization. France had abundant amount of coal and iron reserves, and therefore France began to capitalize on its own reserve to start industrialization. But like England, France also started to occupy colonies in Asia, Africa and even in North America, and therefore England and France became arch rivals against each other initially. So both Britain and France proved to be arch rivals against each other when they began to acquire imperial control. It is therefore not a big surprise. You may be knowing that in India also both British East India Company and French East India Company fought 3 wars to decide their role in India. These wars are known as Anglo-French struggles or the Carnatic Wars. Clear? So initially both Britain and France proved to be arch rivals in European politics, and France began to catch up with Britain after starting rapid industrialization. Clear? After France, the third European power to start industrialization was Germany. Clear? And Germany started industrialization after 1871 because till 1871 Germany was a divided country. It got unified as a nation state in 1871 under the leadership of Otto Bismarck. Clear? And Bismarck followed a very definite approach known as policy of blood and iron. And under blood and iron, Germany started to get industrialized rapidly. Germany had abundant amount of natural reserves, and therefore the pace of industrialization in Germany was much higher than the pace of England and France. Clear? But at the same time, German industrialization was accompanied by large shipbuilding industry. Clear? Because Bismarck knew the real rival for Germany in course of coming time would be Britain, and Britain was dominating Asia and Africa with naval superiority. So to counter the naval superiority of Britain, Bismarck, while going for industrialization, also paid the emphasis on shipbuilding industry, and German industrialization was accompanied by German militarization program. Clear? But in course of time, Germany also jumped into the race for imperialism and colonialism in Asia and Africa, which intensified the race for imperialism and colonialism, and that became a major factor for two world wars in the first half of 20th century. So this is seen as a larger consequence of rapid industrialization in England. Clear? We'll write about these consequences as well. Clear? Right, next paragraph. Clear? Right, after successful industrialization in Britain, other countries began to adopt similar techniques of industrialization, Clear? That the second country to start industrialization was France. Second country to start industrialization was France. Was France by the beginning of the 19th century. Now just understand here. Related to this only, we have a question right now asked by Subhashri. Sir, this industrialization process began in England and then in France. Is it due to territorial agency or trade relations? Clear? Again, it is both because of territorial adjacent or trade relations, because France was not far away from England and France began to know about rapid industrialization of England, and also because of trade relations, because England had trade relations with France, and through this trade relation France came to know about rapid industrialization in England. So both the factors were responsible for France to launch industrialization by the beginning of 19th century. There's another question by Bishwajit. Sir, you say socialism means equal distinction of wealth. Not distinction, equal distribution of wealth. Make it clear. Socialism means equal distribution of wealth, not equal distinction of wealth. Clear? But we see in Russia, China and Germany, there were poor class also and poor concert in one person like Putin, Jim and Penn. Clear? How socialism tends to equal distinction of wealth? Again, I am telling you, Biswajit, it's not equal distinction of wealth. It's equal distribution of wealth. Clear? So you need to correct, it's not equal distinction but equal distribution of wealth. Clear? Now this question that has been asked by Biswajit needs explanation. Clear? Now explanation is, clear? Sir, you say socialism means equal distribution of wealth. Make it clear, it's distribution of wealth. But we see in Russia, China and Germany, there were poor class also and poor and power concert in one person like a power concentration one person like Putin, Jim and Penn. Obviously fine, clear? Penn. Clear? How socialism tends to equal distribution of wealth? Vishwajit. So see, first of all, we need to understand this answer. We need to discuss this question. And question again, I'll repeat to all of you. Clear? Socialism means equal distribution of wealth. But this question is that in Russia, China and Germany, there are poor classes also and concentration of power also like in the hands like Putin, Jim and Pain. Clear? How socialism tends to equal distribution of wealth. Clear? Now, first of all, do understand this topic. It's very important. We had discussed that socialism is an ideology which emphasizes that resources of a nation should be owned and controlled by the state or government, and this central agency will ensure proper distribution of resources among all sections of society. Not distinction, distribution of resources among all society. Now just understand, clear? First of all, here only I will discuss the ideology. Socialism is not an end in itself, clear? Socialism is just a means, clear? The ultimate aim or the ultimate end of socialism is another ideology, and this ideology is that of communism. Clear? No, socialism is not an end in itself. Rather, socialism tends to establish communism, which is ideal objective. Now, what is this objective? Once socialism is established in any society, clear, and resources get distributed equitably among all sections of society, then obviously every section will be satisfied with the resources under their command, and therefore at the high peak of socialism, it will be realized that now the state has done its job, and in the words of socialist thinker, state would come to an end, state will wither away, and therefore it would lead to an ideal society marked by a classless concept and a stateless concept. This ideal society, which is the highest stage of socialism, is known as communism. So communism is basically the end, not the means. Means is socialism. So once socialism gets established in a society, then after the peak of socialism, the state, the controlling agency, will wither away, will come to an end, and therefore a classless society, a stateless society would come into being, and this stateless society or concept is known as communism. Clear? Now again, clear? Normally, all the countries, there's evidence in history that all the countries started to move towards socialism. Clear? But apart from moving towards socialism, all the countries always want to attain the ultimate objective of promoting communism. But unfortunately, no country, ideologically speaking, is a communist country, because every country has got a functioning government. Clear? And therefore, ideologically speaking, communism means a stateless society. But every country has got a state or a government. Therefore, no country, ideologically speaking, can claim itself to be communist country. Clear? So neither Russia, nor China, nor Germany, nor Cuba, nor Venezuela, none of these countries can ideologically claim itself to be communist country. Clear? So they claim themselves to be politically communist, not ideologically communist. Clear? Therefore, that is why we see differences or class distinction between the affluent sections and the poor sections in all the society, because in none of these countries like China, Germany and Russia, there's communist established. Clear? They started with socialism, they tried to move towards communism, but none of them has been able to reach the destination of communism. So make one concept very clear. Ideologically speaking, no country in the world is a communist country, not even China. Clear? In fact, China is marked by state capitalism. That is, capitalism controlled by the state. Clear? We'll discuss the variant of capitalism. So obviously, all the countries has got a functioning government, which is in contrast to communism. So ideologically speaking, no country can claim itself to be communist country, and that is why even countries like Russia, China, Germany, there's a difference. Power concentrations in the hands of leaders like Putin, Xi Jinping, clear? And the large scale poverty that exists in these countries, clear? In fact, these countries started to become, to be cited examples as controlled capitalism rather than socialism or communism. Is that clear, Bishwajit? You need to be conceptually very clear. Got it. Thank you, sir. Clear? Fine. Clear? So moving to another country, that is France. Now just understand, after England, the second country to go for industrial revolution was France, and that too by the beginning of 19th century, especially after successful French Revolution in the end of 18th century. Clear? Right. Right. France. Right. By the end of the 18th century, by the end of the 18th century, French Revolution took place. French Revolution took place. That ended, revolution took place. That ended, ended medieval system, an institution that ended medieval system and institution system and institution clear, like under the leadership of Napoleon Bonaparte. France started rapid industrialization. France started rapid industrialization. Based on its own reserves, of coal and iron, clear, right? However, France also started to acquire imperial and colonial control, over Asia, Africa, and North America. Clear? Right. This led to rivalry between Britain and France. And the two countries proved to be arch rival. The two countries proved to be the arch rival. Clear? Arch rival. Change paragraph. Right, the third European power to start industrialization. Was Germany. After its unification. In 1871. We'll come to all these topics: French Revolution, German unification in 1871. Okay. Right. Under the leadership of Otto von Bismarck. We'll come to all these personalities. Otto von Bismarck. Rapid industrialization was started in Germany. Rapid industrialization was started in Germany, with the definite policy, of blood and iron. Definite policy of blood and iron. Clear? Iron. Right. Due to huge reserves of natural resource, due to huge reserve of natural resource, reserve of natural resource, like coal and iron, like coal and iron. The pace of German industrialization, the pace of German industrialization was much more. The pace of German industrialization was much more than Britain and France. Much more than Britain and France. Much more than Britain and France. Very important. You need to understand distinctive features. Right. Moreover, German industrialization, was accompanied by German industrialization was accompanied by militarization program, related to shipbuilding industry, shipbuilding industry. Clear? Industry. Right. In course of time, Germany emerged to be highly aggressive power. In Europe. Clear? Change paragraph. Like Germany also started to acquire imperial control over Asia and Africa, which intensified the race for imperialism, leading to two world wars, leading to two world wars in the 20th century. Two world wars in the 20th century. Race for imperialism is a major factor. Two world wars in the 20th century. Germany. Clear? Change paragraph. Right. The fourth major European power the fourth major European power to start industrialization, the fourth major European power to start industrialization was Russia. Large country was Russia. Rapid industrialization was Russia. Clear? Right. All medieval system and institutions, all medieval system and institutions came to an end, due to successful socialist revolution, in Russia, in 1917. Revolution Russia in 1917. Okay. Right. Thereafter, industrialization was started in Russia. Industrialization was started in Russia under the leadership of Vladimir Lenin. Under the leadership of Vladimir Lenin. Under the leadership of Vladimir Lenin. Leadership of Vladimir Lenin. Vladimir Lenin. Leadership of Vladimir Lenin. Right. Right. Next sentence. Distinctive feature. Right. However, Russia never tried. However, Russia never tried. Russia never tried to acquire. Russia never tried to acquire colonies. Never tried to acquire colonies in Asia and Africa. Unlike other European powers. Unlike other European powers. Clear? European powers. Clear? European. Right. Russia is a large country. Russia is a large country with abundant reserves. Of natural resource. Abundant reserves of natural resource. Whereby it was not mandatory. Whereby it was not required. It was not required. It was not required to establish imperial control. So Russia never tried to, it was not required to establish imperial control. Differences you must understand between the industrialization of France, Germany and Russia. Clear? Russian industrialization. Now apart from this, just understand, clear? Apart from major countries of Europe that went for industrialization with distinctive feature, clear, industrial revolution had its impact beyond European continent as well, and two major countries that started industrialization beyond European continent, with who decided the fate of global politics also in course of time. These two countries were, first of all, United States in North America, and second was the country of Japan in Asian continent. Clear? We'll discuss about industrialization first of all in United States of America. We'll come to political history of United States separately, but do understand. Clear? United States as such was a country that came into existence in 1848 when 48 states came together under a common federal system known as United States. Clear? Thereafter, United States witnessed a civil war. We'll come to that in American history. And ultimately, right after the end of American Civil War, rapid industrialization was started in United States. The lead was given by American President Abraham Lincoln, but just after the death of Abraham Lincoln, it further continued. Clear? And rapid industrialization took place in United States. Clear? Now, this rapid industrialization that took place in the United States is also termed in some sources as Second Industrial Revolution. Why? Because this industrial revolution was different from all the revolution of European countries, because it was marked by separate set of scientific inventions and discoveries and separate scientific thinking as well. So we'll look into distinctive features of industrialization in United States. Clear? Right, next paragraph. Clear? Right, beyond European continent, rapid industrialization beyond European continent, rapid industrialization took place. Rapid industrialization took place. Industrialization took place in North American country, of United States. North American country of United States. North American country of United States, or US. Country of United States. North American country of United States. United States. Clear? Right. The Industrial Revolution in United States. The Industrial Revolution in United States is termed as the Second Industrial Revolution. Is termed as the Second Industrial Revolution. Second Industrial Revolution. Right, second with inverted comma. Second Industrial Revolution, due to distinct set of scientific inventions and discoveries. Distinct set of scientific inventions and discoveries. Clear? Discoveries. Right. The first revolutionary invention. Was of telephone. By a scientific personality. Alexander Graham Bell. Scientific personality Alexander Graham Bell in 1876. Alexander Graham Bell in 1876. In 1876. works. Clear? Right. This invention promoted proper coordination and networking, proper coordination and networking among different states of the large country, among different states of the large country, different states of the large country. Clear? Right. The second major invention, was of electric bulb. Was of electric bulb. Electric bulb in 1882. In 1882, by Thomas Alva Edison. In 1882, by Thomas Alva Edison. Thomas Alva Edison. Thomas Alva Edison. Thomas Alva Edison, which promoted production activities, without any interruption, day and night. Production activities without any interruption. Without any interruption. Interruption. Clear? Change paragraph. Right. The rapid industrialization in United States. The rapid industrialization in United States was promoted through scientific management theory, promoted through scientific management theory, given by Frederick Winslow Taylor. Given by Frederick Winslow Taylor. Those candidates having public administration as the optional, they must be reading about this thinker, scientific management school, Frederick Winslow Taylor. Clear? Right. According to this theory, workers are to be treated. Workers are to be treated as parts of machine, cogs in the machine. Workers are to be treated as parts of machine. Treated as parts of machine. To ensure efficiency in production. To ensure efficiency in production. To ensure efficiency in production. Efficiency in production. Efficiency in production. Clear? Right. All these factors led to rapid industrialization in United States, in United States during the second half of the 19th century, during the second half of the 19th century, second half of the 19th century. So US industrialization, to clear, much more different was industrialization in Japan. Now just understand, clear from here. The one major country from Asian continent to start rapid industrialization was Japan. Clear? But we need to understand carefully. Just understand. Clear? In the second half of the 19th century, Japan came under the rule of a very progressive dynasty known as the Meiji rulers. Clear? They were very popular, they were very progressive in nature, and Meiji rulers also decided to go for rapid industrialization of Japan. Clear? In order to learn about the technique of industrialization in major European powers, the Meiji rulers sponsored an intellectual mission known as Iwakura Mission. Clear? This mission comprised of Japanese technocrats and Japanese academicians, so that these people should go to Europe and to learn the technique of industrialization which could be replicated in Japan. Clear? Under the sponsorship of Meiji rulers, Iwakura Mission, comprising of technocrats and academicians, went to all major countries of Europe like Britain, France and Germany. After thorough study, Iwakura Mission returned back to Japan and made it clear Japan cannot go for industrialization on the same formula adopted by European powers. Why? This mission made it clear that all European powers went for rapid industrialization due to their rapid resources or due to their large resources of coal and iron, later supplemented by the resources of imperial powers or imperial colonies. Clear? So initially all these countries went for rapid industrialization based on huge reserves of natural wealth, like Germany, France and Britain having coal and iron reserves. Japan did not have such reserves, and therefore it was made clear that with the same formula adopted in European powers, Japan cannot go for rapid industrialization. This was the philosophy given by Japanese, or this was the philosophy given at this point of time. Clear? When such philosophy was given at this point of time, Meiji rulers were very much determined to go for rapid industrialization. Since they were determined to go for rapid industrialization at this time, clear, Meiji rulers, clear, first of all decided to go for another technique. They decided to import finished products from mainland European countries, and after importing those products, they decided to make some value additions to those products, and again those products were to be sold in European market at higher prices to earn revenue. Meaning thereby, Japan decided to go for innovation or value addition, whereby imported products were to be added with some more value, and those value added products were to be sold at higher prices in the same market, and with that revenue was to be earned. So through such innovations and value addition, Japan began to earn revenue, and with this revenue Japan began to establish large and heavy industries. When large and heavy industries began to be established in Japan, Japanese industrialization, like German industrialization, was accompanied by huge militarization program. Japan also started to establish shipbuilding industry. A large number of warships were manufactured by Japan, and in course of time Japan emerged to be highly militarized and aggressive power. And Japan became so aggressive in nature that in the beginning of 20th century, Japan defeated one of the largest country of Europe, that is Russia, in 1905, and thereafter adopted huge aggressive measures against adjoining countries like China as well. So even though being late comer, Japanese industrialization was marked by different techniques, the most important being innovation in place of inventions, followed in all the countries of different power, all the countries of the world will write about Japanese industrialization. Clear? Right, next paragraph. Clear? Right, in Asian continent, Japan became the first country. Japan became the first country to start rapid industrialization, to start rapid industrialization, start rapid industrialization, to start rapid industrialization, to start rapid industrialization. Listen, clear? Right, in the second half of the 19th century, in the second half of the 19th century, 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 Japan began to be ruled. Japan began to be ruled by the Meiji rulers. Japan began to be ruled by the Meiji rulers. Began to be ruled by Meiji rulers who were highly progressive. Who were highly progressive. Highly progressive. Who were highly progressive. Progressive. Clear? Right. These rulers sponsored. These rulers sponsored. Sponsored. These rulers sponsored. These rulers sponsored Iwakura Mission. Sponsored Iwakura Mission, comprising of Japanese technocrats, and academicians. Japanese technocrats and academicians to learn about European industrialization, to learn about European industrialization, to learn about European industrialization. European industrialization. To learn about European industrialization and to start Japanese industrialization. And to start Japanese industrialization. Start Japanese industrialization. Clear? Right. This mission, after thorough study, returned back to Japan. After thorough study, returned back to Japan. And made it clear that Japan cannot follow European model. Japan cannot follow European model, as Japan does not have, natural wealth, does not have natural wealth, clear? Right. However, Meiji rulers were determined. And they started to emphasize, on innovation rather than they began to emphasize on innovation rather than inventions. Clear? Right. Japan began to import finished products from Europe. Japan began to import finished products from Europe. And after making some innovations, along with value additions, and even value additions, the products were sold in European market. At higher prices. Okay. Right. In this way, Japan began to earn profit, and started to promote large and heavy industries. Okay. Right. At the same time, Japanese industrialization was accompanied by militarization program, with focus on shipbuilding industry, like Germany. Clear? Like by the beginning of the 20th century, Japan became an aggressive country. Which even defeated Russia which even defeated Russia in 1905. Even defeated Russia in 1905. 1905. Clear? Right. Next sentence. Right. Therefore, it is accepted. Therefore, it is accepted that even though being latecomer, right, latecomer within inverted comma, this is a statement. Therefore, it is accepted that even though being latecomer, Japan exhibited several distinctive features of industrialization. Several distinctive features of industrialization. Clear? So, Japanese industrialization. You got this question also in mains examination 2013. Even though being latecomer, Japanese industrialization was marked by several distinctive features, largely based on innovation, not invention. Clear? So, these major, so this is seen as consequences of industrial revolution in Britain. Clear? So all these consequences, clear? So major factors that led to rapid industrialization in Britain and major consequences of rapid industrialization of England. Clear? We discussed industrialization in all major countries of the world. Clear? So this was the first topic of industrial revolution to be covered in world history. But as we had discussed initially, that apart from explicit topics, there are certain implied topics that also needs to be covered to give a sense of completion related to world history. Clear? By the middle of 18th century, industrialization took place in Britain with long-term consequences all across the world at the same time. Clear? By the middle of 18th century, almost simultaneously, clear, a very important political development took place in North America, which is known as American War of Independence, that led to the liberation of North America from colonial powers. Clear? So with this, we'll move on to discuss about history of North America, also known as American history. Clear? And when we discuss about American history, do remember we are largely referring to North American region, because South America was largely the colony of Spain. Clear? Spain dominated the entire region of South America except one country, that is Brazil, which was under Portuguese control. Therefore, all this region presently is known as Latin America. Latin America is a term applied to those countries of South America where still Spanish is the dominant language, because all these countries were colonies of Spain. Clear? So entire South America was under the domination of Spain except one country, that is Brazil, and therefore all these countries as of now collectively is known as Latin America, because still Spanish remained to be a dominant language. When we discuss about American history, we're discussing about North America. North America comprises of United States, Canada, and to some extent the central region of Mexico. Clear? And largely will refer to the continent of North America, especially United States, which comprises of 50 units under one common federal center. Will come to American history. Clear? So we'll understand about American history, that is North America, especially the country of United States, and we'll discuss how this country has emerged to be the most powerful country in the world. Clear? So coming to American history now. Clear? So we'll discuss about American history and we'll discuss about American continent. Clear? Largely the North America, especially United States. Clear? So we'll look into United States of America. Clear? So for instance, clear, just understand about the location of this large country, United States of America. This large country is almost in this shape as of now. Clear? This country, at the same time we have one region here known as the region of Florida, roughly. Clear? At the same time, clear, coming to this region, we'll understand. Clear? Now, clear? This region is the region of Atlantic coast. This region is that of the region of Pacific coast. Clear? Here we have Mexico. Here we have the region of Canada. Beyond Canada, we have the largest state being known as Alaska, which is a part of United States. Clear? So this is the large continent of United States, large country of United States, comprising of 50 states as of now. Clear? So coming to this region, first of all, I'll let you know on how this region was colonized, American history. Clear? First of all, I'll let you know. Clear? Write the heading as American history, which is a long topic. Clear? Write American history. Now just understand first of all. Clear? Today in the class we had discussed about the beginning of modern age, and this beginning started around 13th century when a cultural movement was started in Europe known as Renaissance. Clear? When this cultural movement known as Renaissance was started in Europe, with the beginning of Renaissance, geographical inquiry, scientific thinking began to take place, and with this scientific thinking and rational inquiry, even era of geographical discoveries was started. Clear? The lead in geographical discovery was taken by two European countries. These two countries were Spain and Portugal. Why Spain and Portugal only? They are peninsular country located in Iberian Peninsula, not far away from African continent, and therefore two countries took lead in era of geographical discoveries. And here only we need to understand, by the end of 15th century, Spain and Portugal decided to divide the whole world among themselves. Clear? Spain decided to establish control over the western part of the world, and Portugal decided to establish control over eastern part of the world. Clear? In this process only, there was a Spanish sailor who sailed towards the western coast, and this Spanish sailor, while moving towards the western region, he discovered the large continent of North America. He realized that a new world has been discovered, and it was named as New World as well. Columbus reached to this region, and when Columbus reached to this region, clear? At this time, when Columbus reached to this region, this region was colonized by large number of Spanish people, and this region came to be known as the region of Florida. Clear? So Florida was colonized by Spanish people because Columbus came to this region in 1494. So Spanish decided to establish control over the western part. Later on, Spanish people established control over the entire South America, which is presently known as Latin America, because Spanish still remained to be the dominant language in Latin America. In this process only, Portugal started towards the eastern side of the world, and Portuguese sailor Vasco da Gama, clear, reached up to the southern coast of India in 1498, and Portuguese were the first to come to India on the southern coast. So in this way, Spain and Portugal decided to divide the whole world among themselves in the beginning of, by the end of 15th century. Clear? Later on, Britain and France and other countries jumped into the race, but initially the two countries were Spain and Portugal, and in this quest only Spanish sailor Columbus discovered the whole continent, and Spanish people got settled down on the southeastern region of Florida, coast of Florida at this time, and it became a colony of Spain. Clear? In course of time, after Spain, other powers also began to come to this region. The second power to come to this region, these were the people of Portuguese or Portugal. So Portugal also came to this region, and Portuguese established their control along the Pacific coast. So along the Pacific coast, Spanish or Portuguese established their control, but Portuguese could not stay for long, and Portuguese left this region, and this region was occupied by Mexicans. Clear? So Mexicans began to live in this region, and Mexicans dominated this region along the Pacific coast. Clear? In course of time, British also came to this region, and British dominated this large region, and British began to dominate this region along the Atlantic coast. Clear? And along the Atlantic coast, when British came to this region, British divided this whole region into 13 colonies. Now do understand, clear? British people came to this region to stay permanently. Clear? So it was not a proxy control. Large number of British traders, planters, merchants, they decided to settle along the Atlantic coast permanently. So this region became the colony of Britain from the beginning, and since they came to this region to stay permanently, in order to ensure proper law and order, they divided this region to 13 British colonies. Clear? So 13 British colonies were established in this region. So 13 British colonies were established in this region along the Atlantic coast. Clear? Because they wanted to settle down this region permanently. Now this was the leftover region, and this leftover region was occupied by France. Clear? So France occupied this region and it came to be known as French occupied territory. Clear? This region was occupied by France, and France named this region as New France. Clear? So France named this region as New France. This region was also named by France as Louisiana. Louisiana. Clear? So this was the region of New France or Louisiana. Shall I use another color? We'll take the red color only. So it was named as New France or the region of Louisiana. It came under French control. Clear? So altogether the entire United States was parceled out among four major powers, that is Spanish ruling over the region of Florida, British ruling over the region along the Atlantic coast, then Mexicans began to rule over along Pacific coast, and large region in Midway came under French control. To the north of this is the region of Canada. Clear? So this was American condition by the end of 18th century. Clear? Now we'll understand what happened thereafter. Clear? This is clear first of all. First of all, we'll write till this point. Sir, India witnessed any influence impact as a result of industrialization that happened in Britain during India's colonization? Yeah, India, Nimai, clear. India witnessed impact of industrialization. You must have done in world of modern India. India rather became a supplier of raw materials to British industries and consumer of British finished products. Since huge amount of machine-made products began to come to India, the products of Indian cottage industries could not compete with the machine-made products, and therefore cottage industries began to close down. And therefore there's a huge paradox of human history that when Britain was witnessing rapid industrialization, India witnessed the phenomena of deindustrialization. Clear? So India went through the phase of deindustrialization when Britain was going through the phase of industrialization, just because of discriminatory approach adopted by British traders and merchants towards India. This is clear. Nimai, is the impact clear? So India paid price for British industrialization, and large number of Indian cotton industries began to close down just because of discriminatory trade practices followed by British traders, and therefore it affected Indian economy largely. It's clear. Okay, so this is American history. Write about first of all. Write heading as American history. Clear? Right. Right. With the beginning of Renaissance in Europe, cultural movement, with the beginning of Renaissance in Europe, an era of geographical discovery, began. An era of geographical discovery began in Europe. Discovery began in Europe. Clear? Right. Next sentence. Right. The pioneering role in geographical discovery. The pioneering role in geographical discovery was played by in geographical discovery was placed by the pioneering role in geographical discovery was played by Spain and Portugal was played by Spain and Portugal, and these countries decided to divide the whole world, among themselves, whole world among themselves. Clear? Right. Spain decided to establish control. Spain decided to establish control over the Western world, and Portuguese decided to establish control on the Eastern world, Clear? Eastern world. Right. Consequently, consequently, clear? Consequently, Spanish sailor Columbus, discovered the continent of America, discovered the continent of America, in 1494. In 1494. Okay. Right. Thereafter, Spanish people, established their colony, over southeastern region of North America, southeastern region of North America, known as Florida. Southeastern region of North America, known as Florida. Known as Florida. This one thing. Clear? Change paragraph. Right. The Portuguese entered North America. The Portuguese entered North America. Portuguese entered North America through Pacific coast. But after some time, it was occupied by the Mexicans. Who were originally Spanish. who were originally Spanish. Mexicans were originally Spanish. Clear? Spanish. Spanish. Clear? So you got your answer, Tista. Mexicans who occupied the Pacific coast of the US, were they Spanish? Yeah, they were Spanish. Clear? As Mexico was inhabited by Aztecs. Clear? Before being butchered by the Spanish. You're absolutely right. Clear? So Mexicans were originally Spanish only. Clear? Who rather forced Portuguese to leave this region, because there was an agreement already that Portuguese will dominate the western part of the world, Spanish will dominate the western part of the world. So Spanish later on came to be known as Mexicans. Clear? So Mexicans began to dominate along the Pacific coast. So Mexico was inhabited by the Aztecs before being butchered by the Spanish. Clear? So all these were originally Spanish people, got settled down as Mexicans. Clear? Change paragraph. Clear? Right. The third European power to reach North America, the third European power to reach North America was Britain. Was Britain. Clear? Was Britain. Right. Large number of British traders, merchants, planters, etc., decided to settle down in North America, along the Atlantic coast. So since they decided to settle down, it became colony, Atlantic coast. Clear? Right. In order to ensure proper administration, British divided this region into 13 British colonies. 13 British colonies. 13 British colonies. Change paragraph. Right. Finally, the large central region of North America, was occupied by France, which was named as New France or Louisiana. Clear? So in this way, the whole North America was parceled out among major European powers like Spain, Portugal, Britain and France. Now just understand from here. Clear? As we all know, clear, that Britain and France initially were arch rivals against each other. We had discussed that France became the second country trying to catch up with Britain, and that also led to conflict of interest between Britain, France and India, also leading to Anglo-French wars or Carnatic wars. Clear? As France got settled down in the region adjoining 13 British colonies, quite obviously 13 British colonies began to feel insecure. Clear? And therefore, out of insecurity, 13 British colonies who had been supporting their home country, that is Britain, and they had been supplying large amount of raw materials like raw cotton and other materials to the home country. These 13 colonies requested the home government Britain to take action against France, having control over Louisiana or New France. Clear? Just because it was highly beneficiary for Britain to have these 13 colonies, Britain accepted the demand of 13 British colonies, and Britain declared war against France in 1756. Clear? This war went on for 7 years, and therefore it is known in world history as 7 Years' War. Clear? In this war, finally, France was defeated in 1763, and the war came to an end by the Treaty of Paris, which had huge significance for India also, because in this 7 Years' War only, France was finally defeated by Britain in the Battle of Vandewage. Clear? The war came to an end by Treaty of Paris in 1763. Under the terms of the Treaty of Paris, France was allowed to maintain political control over New France or Louisiana, but France was prohibited to have any trading privileges or any trade contacts with North America. Clear? So France could maintain political control, but France could not have any trade relationship with North America. This was the term and condition decided in Treaty of Paris, and that was a huge relief for 13 British colonies. Clear? However, when 7 Years' War came to an end, British economy got largely affected because it had to fight for 7 years continuously against France. In order to recover for the losses incurred in this 7 Years' War, British Parliament and British government in London decided to impose taxes on 13 British colonies. Clear? First of all, they imposed a tax on 13 colonies known as stamp duty. Clear? And the stamp duty was that for any commercial transaction done in 13 colonies, certain amount of revenue was to pay to British government in London. Clear? From here, differences began to take place between 13 British colonies and British government in London. Clear? British colonies began to protest against imposition of these taxes, and in 1765, even though stamp duty was abolished, British government began to impose taxes on several consumer goods like tea, paper, tea, and other important commodities. Clear? Even protests started against the payment of taxes on these consumer goods as well, and therefore in 1765 only, the leaders of 13 British colonies convened an assembly at Massachusetts. Clear? And when they convened the assembly at Massachusetts, they raised a slogan at this time, that is, no taxation without representation. These leaders were of opinion that since 13 British colonies are not represented in British Parliament, British Parliament does not have any right to impose taxes upon them. Clear? Since they were British people only, they knew about the rights, they raised the slogan of no taxation without representation. From here, differences began to take place between British government in London and 13 British colonies in North America. So it must be noted, American War of Independence was basically a conflict between the members of same country, that is British government in London, and British members permanently settled in North American region. This was the beginning of conflict of interest between 13 British colonies and British government in London. Clear? Right, next paragraph. Clear? Right, due to the establishment of French control over Louisiana, New France, establishment of French control over Louisiana, a sense of insecurity emerged. In 13 British colonies, because France and Britain were arch rivals because France and Britain were arch rivals. Britain were arch rivals. Clear? Right. The leaders of the 13 British colonies, the leaders of the 13 British colonies requested Britain to take action against France. Take action against France. France, clear? Right. Consequently, Britain declared war. Consequently, Britain declared war against France. Britain declared war against France in 1756. In 1756, which continued 1756, which continued for 7 years, to be known as, write in capital, to be known as the 7 Years' War. To be known as the 7 Years' War. Write in bracket 1756 to 1763. 7 Years' War. 7 Years' War. 1756 to 1763. Right. In this military clash, military clash, France was defeated. And the war came to an end. Through the Treaty of Paris. Through the Treaty of Paris in 1763. Treaty of Paris in 1763. 63. Clear? Right. According to this treaty, France was allowed to retain political control. France was allowed to retain political control over Louisiana, New France. Political control over Louisiana. But was prohibited to have trading contact with North America. Trade contact with North America. To have trade contact with North America. Clear? Change paragraph. Okay, right. Right. Due to the 7 Years' War. British economy got affected. And British Parliament decided to impose taxes on 13 British colonies. Taxes on 13 British colonies. 13 British colonies. British colonies. Clear? Right. In 1763, British Parliament, British Parliament decided to collect British Parliament decided to collect stamp duty. British Parliament decided to collect stamp duty. Stamp duty. Stamp duty in 13 British colonies. In 13 British colonies. Clear? Right. The leaders of the 13 British colonies, the leaders of the 13 British colonies began to protest against the stamp duty, began to protest against the stamp duty. Protest against the stamp duty. Okay? Due to such protest, stamp duty was abolished. Due to such protest, stamp duty was abolished. In 1765, was abolished in 1765. But British Parliament announced that it has right to impose. British Parliament announced that it has right to impose. It has right to impose taxes on consumer goods. Taxes on consumer goods. Taxes on consumer goods like tea, TEA. Taxes on consumer goods like tea, paper, rubber, etc. Tea, paper, rubber, etc. Clear? Etc. Right. In order to protest against such taxes, protest against such taxes, the leaders of the 13 British colonies, convened an assembly at Massachusetts. 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 An assembly at Massachusetts. Convened assembly at Massachusetts and raised the slogan of No taxation without representation. Raise the slogan of no taxation without representation. There were no representatives in British Parliament. No taxation without representation. Clear? Right. Due to intense protest, due to intense protest, British Parliament abolished, British Parliament abolished taxes on consumer goods. British Parliament abolished taxes on consumer goods except tax on tea. It was a luxury item at the time. Except tax on tea. Tea was a very luxury item, largely produced in India, which was under British control. Except tax on tea, which led to a serious controversy. Which led to a serious controversy. Led to a serious controversy. Clear? Right. A large British ship, SHIP, a large British ship with Indian tea. A large British ship with Indian tea. With Indian tea. With Indian tea. A large British ship with Indian tea reached the coast of Boston in North America. Reached the coast of Boston in North America. Coast of Boston in North America in 1773. In 1773. Okay. Like next sentence, like several leaders of the 13 British colony, several leaders of the 13 British colonies, 13 British colonies boarded the ship. 13 British colonies boarded the ship. Boarded the ship. Boarded the ship and threw the boxes of tea. And threw the boxes of tea, crates of tea, boxes of tea, and threw the boxes of tea in the river Boston. The coast, in the river Boston. Boston. Clear? Right. This event in American history, this event in American history is popularly known as this event in American history is popularly known as the Boston Tea Party. Popularly known as the Boston Tea Party of 1773. Boston Tea Party of 1773 that resulted into serious differences. That resulted into serious differences between the 13 British colonies. Serious differences between the 13 British colonies and the British government. And the British government. And the British government. Boston Tea Party, 1773. Clear? No, thereafter differences began to emerge in a big way, and thereafter only the leaders of 13 British colonies convened several conferences, tried to reconcile with the British government. When all measures failed, it resulted into American War of Independence, leading to independence of 13 British colonies from control of British government in London. We'll come to major clash in American War of Independence. Clear? And why this war of independence, known as revolution, that is drastic changes which could not be reversed till contemporary times, will come to those consequences of American War of Independence as well. Clear? This was the beginning of American history. It's a long topic, it will take time. Clear? So we'll discuss about, we'll continue from here in the next session, whereby we'll discuss about American War of Independence, then American Constitution, and then finally American Civil War as well. Clear? Is that okay? So we'll wind up the session for today. Right now the timing is still 4 o'clock only. Clear? We'll continue from here tomorrow. Clear? If you have any query, any other question that comes to your mind, just keep a note of that question. Ask me tomorrow. I'm always there to handle your questions. Clear? So don't just feel free in my sessions. Clear? And keep on revising things. Clear? We'll be covering world history in this ongoing session. Clear? Okay. Thank you and all the best. I hope everything was clear to all of you. Everything was clear to all of you. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Okay, fine. So, clear? We'll continue from here tomorrow. Clear? And we'll continue with American history. Clear? Thank you.